So just on those commercial relations and projects like the ones that you mentioned, and there may be others as well, are there any existing current live agreements in place, or are there others that where you're in negotiating, or is it at the stage of you're out looking?
So really funny. We go to some town, right? We meet the guy, you meet the mayor, right? And you talk to the people.
Buy over 50 cryptocurrencies with no fees whatsoever using crypto.com. Get a £50 bonus by using my link and signing up on the website.
And there's like a local partner, and they're like, oh, we can make so much money on this, and like blah 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 blah, because they went to a meeting, and the government said we need this, we need that, and they ordered us to do this, they ordered us to do that, and and basically every government, every municipality, every company, they want to look green, they want to look sustainable, they want to say that they're using AI in their business, they want to say they're using blockchain, they want to say that they're adopting this, and that they can produce, they need less worker. They want to say that like the workers are now sitting in this little comfortable air conditioned thing, drinking frappuccinos and lattes, and operating the oil instead of being and operating the coal equipment instead of being a freaking coal mine all day, where it's like the coal mine is like 100 degrees or something, or 80 degrees centigrade, and it's full of like toxic fumes and sulfur, and they have like 40 miners dying. You don't even want to know. And so the government in China, they looked the other way basically during the last 40 years, 20 years, whatever. Like I know a guy, he had a chemical plant, and every year the chemical plant would explode and kill 4 to 6 people. And in the Western, and this is why the government you'd pay a fine, and you'd give the family of the person who got burned or killed some money, and it is what it is. And they don't really hate the business owner. It's not like, oh, this evil capitalist killing his workers. It is what it is, and that was tolerated for a while, right? And now the government says we don't want any more people dying in explosions. You can't have 20 workers a year dying in your mine anymore. Right? So and that of course increases the costs of doing this type of thing. So when we go in there when we go in, a lot of it isn't even the customer. We go in and we talk to the networking, this company, they're providing services for 32,000 businesses, and they're networking services, and they come to us and they say, oh, well, what do you have? And we say, we have this and this and this. And like, oh my God, that's great, because they're looking for more things to sell. So we provide them the hardware, we teach them how to set it up, and they make a lot of money. So if we were to go business to business doing this, it would be a pain in the ass. So Cisco, right, they train people, and they have Cisco certified vendors, and the vendor sells the equipment. The vendor sets it up. So for us, if we wanted to expand to 100,000 businesses in 2 years, we of course have to go through existing sales channels, people that are set up, people who have a list of 30,000 businesses where they can say, hey, do you want this? Hey, you have your Cisco equipment. We can't sell you that anymore because the Communist Party banned it. So what do you do?
So
right?
Does Skycoin have existing relationships with these sales channels?
For years. Yeah. The reason we developed this was because these people were asking us for that. So I'm a big fan of customer-driven development. I like technology and playing with all these toys, and I have all the robots and all the new toys and mesh networking. I'm always the first to buy it, test it out. I buy everything, take it apart. So always for everything. But the reality is, you could have technology, but it's useless. When I did consulting, what you find out is you have this product, you go to the customer, and the product brings you into the meeting, right? And then you find out that whatever you have will not solve the people's problem, right? So then you end up building something completely different. Maybe you're a natural language processing company, and you go into this company, and they have this problem, and they're storing all this data, and they really need a NoSQL data storage solution. So you end up building a NoSQL database because it's customer. Then you say, oh, I got this NoSQL database, and another big company comes in, and they say, yeah, we want that. But you get in the meeting, and they want a CRM system. And so what do? You build a CRM system, because that's what you have to do to get the $10 million, $2 million, $500,000 contract per year. So what really matters isn't what you have, it's your development ability to be able to build the product and the customer demand. So you have to actually, so one of the things is you should just listen to what the problems they have, what they're willing to pay for, and then you should build it. And that's something different than building something and then trying to sell it. So like the most successful company as a startup is when you have a huge customer, maybe one two customers. They need this thing, and you have the ability to build it, and they'll pay for it. Then you don't need to invest. Okay, well, you build this. It'll take us 6 months, and ideally someone you have an existing business relationship with that knows you, and they'll pay $500,000. You'll hire some developers. You'll build this product. This guy had this problem. You solve it for him, and then you know that there's 5,000 other people with that same problem, and then it's just sales. So for me, that's I really believe in the customer-driven development. It's not just technology-driven development. So we look at basically what the needs are for the customer, where the money is. So a lot of people talk about 5G or AI or blockchain, and the reality is they don't really need that in their business. It sounds cool on paper. It's something to experiment with, but it's like the banks. They said, "Oh yeah, we did blockchain pilot," but there isn't a single bank that's. Oh, I can't say that. There's just some stuff, but it's not public. There's the large banks, HSBC. They're not using blockchain at all in any of their core infrastructure. Some of their core infrastructure has not been updated since the 1980s.
Okay.
Some of their core infrastructure runs on like a freaking VAX emulator. It's
Okay.
like a IBM mainframe emulator.
Let me bring you back. Let's bring it back to the streams, right? So, so does Skycoin as a project have revenue coming in reliably, regularly from these commercial agreements?
So we were like, I think that the goal in the next year or two, the next year probably, is to basically cover all of our base overhead outside the crypto market. So there's some things that we've done, like we might spin out we have a lot of options in terms of like a lot of the core technology that isn't related to Skycoin, like we can spin it out as a separate company, raise money, and then hire developers and things that are going to be basically working full time on the core project. And there's things like that. But basically that's what we were doing before COVID. We were setting up these government contracts. We were doing the meetings. We were setting up. That was all being set up before this bullshit happened. So it's still a goal, but it's not really urgent. Like we actually have a lot of time. I'm not really. I don't feel rushed or like.
If you don't have the revenue coming in from those streams, does the project have revenue coming from somewhere? Is it well funded?
Yeah, we're basically fine for like 10 or at the current rate, like 10 or 20 years. I'm not really worried about that. And it's not just the like the existing store of funds or it's a lot of things. So we didn't just it's very very complicated because we have several things that we did like. And it's very complicated, but there's not really a shortage of money. So you have investors over here, and they want to you have a government contract, right? It might be $5 million, $50 million, right? Or you have a customer, and they want to have a new company that uses the technology for some application. Like they're going to do this project, and you set up a new company. They put the money in the company, and then that's being used to fund development, or some of the revenue is being kicked back to another thing, or there's the option of starting these new companies, and some of them even can go on the private market. So like if we're setting up certain sales channels, Skycoin is actually sort of a nonprofit software development open source company. We can't legally have revenue. It's very there's some issues about like you develop some technology, but someone else then patents it, and then they sue you. And then what happens? So what jurisdiction do you want to be in? Or you have a lawsuit, and it's $2 million to defend this lawsuit. And if you don't have any money in your bank account or any assets in the company, they can't really sue you because it doesn't matter, right? So there's certain things like how do you set up your legal structure, and how do you operate in crypto, and how do you deal with these patent trolls, and how do you if you're a nonprofit, how do you get revenue coming in every month to pay salary without having to how do you do corporate governance? How do you so it's the crypto model is something that so Skycoin is an organization, is an open source, it's basically a nonprofit. I don't know what and there's different legal structures actually. It's not just one legal structure, and there's a legal structure for each country. So you have to do one structure for every country you're operating in. And so in terms of paying developers and covering base overhead, I'm not really worried about that in terms of the company's survival, because to be honest, like there's a lot of people, like one fund, and they lost $1 billion on Tron, right? And they're one of our friends. So if we need to do something and we only need $5 million, they won't. It's like drop of water to these people. If you look at some of these funds, like you're dealing with like $44 billion, like, Hong Kong insurance funds, and the owners of that fund is like three guys, and they decide, yeah, we like this, yeah, blah, blah, and some of these pools of money are just absurd. So
Right.
when you actually compare what we're spending in terms of project development to what we need, to what's available, it's just a joke. It's ridiculous. But the one thing I do want to do that we can't do now is I want to have 10 or 20 million a year coming in, because I want to be able to have a full-time business development team for CX, and a full-time marketing team for CX, and I want to have a full-time team doing universities and building university content and training educators at universities and flying educators to universities to sort of, teach courses and things like that. I want to have a full-time 8 groups for the CX project development. I want a full-time engineering support team for Skywire. I want, a full-time analytics team for Skywire for doing, reports and graphs and network administration, and engineering support for dealing with customers. And each engineer should only have 1 to 3 customers that they're dealing with, so they're not overloaded. I want to have a full-time business development team for Skywire. I want to have a full-time marketing team for Skywire. I want to have, there's a lot of, so I look at this and I say, okay, maybe this team's only 1 to 3 people, maybe 5 people, but so if we have these verticals like Skywire and CX, they should have their own business development person or team, ideally, for business development. They should have their own marketing team. They should have a sales team. So you have business development, marketing, and sales. And when you get to a certain size, these are separate people, right? You have one guy doing marketing, business development, and sales. You say, what's the difference between marketing, business development, and sales? Because people think they're the same thing, and they're not. So like the business development is going to a mine and talking to them and figuring out what the requirements are so that we can spec out a solution and start prototyping it. Whereas the sales team is taking an existing product and making brochures and guides of how to set it up. And they can say, and they can show, we did this mine. Here's the equipment they did. Here's the how many nodes they have. Here's their layout. Here's their network plan. And so they have a prototype for, here's another mine. What can we do? So you have the sales team, and they're not engineers. So they have a technical problem, and they have to have an engineering support team that goes and fix the technical problem. And then there's different levels of engineering support. So there's like tier 1, which requires software to be changed. And if you have a problem, you don't want your software engineers bugged every day. So you have a level tier 2 technical support, which is operations and people operating servers and stuff but can do a little bit of software, but not much. And then you have your help desk support. So help desk support is the problem that 100,000 people have, and they're just looking at the manuals, trying to figure out what the problem and do this. Okay, it didn't work. Then it goes to level 2, and then level 2 is like, okay, the server was down, so I had to reset the server. Okay, and then if it's a software bug, then get escalated to tier 1. So you have 3 levels of software support, which are 3 separate teams, so the engineers aren't being bugged. Then you have a business development team, a marketing team, and a sales team for 3 different, for the CX vertical, the hardware, and then we have hardware support, which is another thing, which is some guy installed this thing in the desert and it got sand in it and this gear doesn't work, so we had to redesign the gear, then we have to remanufacture it, and then we have to send the new equipment to the customer because we find out the plastic wasn't UV resistant and it starts cracking after 4 months. So on the hardware side, we have distribution, marketing, sales, engineering support, re-engineering materials, supply chain. So I have to have a full-time person for supply chain because we bought a screw.
Synth, hold on.
Yeah.
We'll come to the hardware.
You can get this idea.
I can get the idea. I can get the enormous complexity.
Wait. This is something that we bought screws, right? These M3 screws. Some of the providers, they didn't heat the screw and harden it. And what happens is if you put the Allen wrench in, the screw strips because it was a cheap Chinese screw. And so this guy swore to God to us that he was a screw manufacturer and that he had his own factory. And we would not buy the screws from him unless he told us he has his own screw factory. He gave us pictures of his factory and the address. So we assumed that he had a factory that manufactured screws, but we did not visit the factory.
Right.
So we ordered batches of screws from 6 people. 4 of them were shit. So we did not order anything more from those suppliers. One of the guys said he didn't have a factory and was a distributor, so we cut him off the list. The guy who said he had the factory and he gave us good quality screws that didn't strip, we bought the screws from him. Then the next time we ordered a bag of screws, it weighed like 250 kilos. The delivery guy broke his back carrying this fucking box. They put 250 kilos of screws in one box or something instead of putting it in smaller boxes. For I don't know why. The second batch of screws that was sent to us stripped. And then the guy was confronted, and he admitted that he was just a distributor and was a middleman and did not own a screw factory. So then we had to switch our supply chain to order. So we then started looking again for another manufacturer of like M3 hexagonal cylindrical headed screws with this alloy, right? And we didn't want it to rust. Shanghai has 70 degrees humidity, so if it's the wrong steel, it rusts. If it wasn't heat treated, it's too soft and it strips, and then we can't get the freaking screw out, and we have to drill it, and it wastes like 2 freaking hours. And sometimes the screws are the wrong length. I don't know why. They send the wrong, it's this screw. They give us 10,000 screws, and 2 of the screws in the box are the wrong length. So that supplier, he's off the list, right? So you end up having one, and this is just, maybe there's 150 screws in this thing. And every one of those screws has to be sourced, has to be tested. We have to weigh the screw to check the manufacturing variation, have to get out the calipers, because these screws look the same, but it's not. This one's actually 1 millimeter longer than that one. Because the screws they sent to us, they swore to God it was one manufacturing batch, and they mixed 2 batches together, and different screws have different heat treatments and different, and this is the shit, we'll have a full-time person who's just ordering screws. And this is the shit. So you can imagine when you're dealing,
Synth.
I need a 3, yeah. Okay, so this is.
I want to say something. So one is, I really do enjoy my conversations with you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I enjoy, right, is I do give you the space to freeform, and you're like the VPN, multi-hopping. Yeah. Multi-hopping. However, in this conversation, in today's video, I want to be able to direct the route that you're going to take.
Okay, so for funding, there's a difference between we started really low overhead, very small number of people, one guy doing marketing, sales, and business development, right? Going from that low overhead to Cisco, to a publicly traded Fortune 500 company with 100,000 customers, going from this to this, when I worked doing consulting, I was shocked at how much money like Thomas Reuters was spending and what the overhead was to the Fortune 500. I was shocked. But then, because I could do that with 4 people, and you could. But when you go from this little thing to we have 100,000 customers, the scale, the overhead, the division of labor, it's like building an ant colony.
Yeah.
It's just like so we're at this scale, we're fine, right? But if we're fighting toe to toe with Cisco, and we're trying to take out Cisco, that's a transition.
Get funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if you look at Ubiquity Networks, I love this company. Really interesting story. You should look at the wiki, read the story of how this guy started this company. They only have 200 or 300 people, and that's about the size that we want to be. Is 300, 500 people. I don't really want to be bigger than that, because that's the scale that we need for this global operations and to operate at that scale. I don't want to have 15,000 employees at this point for what our current plans are. I'm just trying to get from this low overhead stage to this stage that when a customer calls, a customer's router breaks, should the CEO of the company get a phone call at 2 a.m. with some company screaming at him? It's like, it's you need to have a business process for handling all of the routine things that are happening day to day, so that you have a separation of the operations versus strategic planning versus the day-to-day stuff. Like the software developer shouldn't be bothered every time a customer has a problem. You should have a support guy. And so you start building up these layers, basically, because your volume of shit that you're doing goes from one thing to 10,000 things per day that you have to handle. So you have this constant flow of stuff coming in, right? And every day you have to handle it and get it off your plate and get rid of it efficiently as possible. And so we're about 2 layers now. We had like 1 layer, now we're at 2 layers. And eventually going into this distributor model, we'll be 3 or 4 layers. And then hardware is the completely another thing. Like if we're doing with mine sites and oil rigs, and that whole division could be 40 people. So these new divisions are going to be bigger than the whole existing operation of Skycoin as a software development unit. Okay. So software development unit is going to expand 3x, but these other things are going to be 50 people over here, 50 people over there, 30 people over there. And these little groups add up pretty quick. And so then the question is, how do you support that overhead? If you have if you have 400, 500 people on payroll, you need money coming in every month to pay them, right? Mm-hmm. If you have 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, it's not the challenge. If you're only spending a few million a year, it's pretty easy. It's easy mode. But when you're spending 100 million, 40 million, 20 million a year, it's much more dangerous situation because your runway is shorter. If you even if you have 100, some of these Silicon Valley companies raise $100 million, And if you're spending $2 million a year, that'll last you 50 years. But if you have $100 million and you're spending 50 or 80 million a year, you're going to be broke in a year, right? So, so there's an argument about when do we expand, what stage of product development, and I think as soon as the product is done and the first customer and the first contracts are coming in, then we're able to comfortably start that type of corporate expansion. But that's also determined by other things like project development and software development, and this, how the governments are and how the geopolitical aspects, and sometimes you can work for 2 years developing a customer or developing a project before you're actually on the ground, right? So it's
okay. Okay, then a few questions I want to ask you is about the with the crypto community and the Skycoin community. I appreciate how accessible you are because you're in the Telegram group. You make yourself available for interviews with me and with other YouTubers and stuff. But are there any plans for? There used to be monthly updates to let people know what was happening. For having
I'm responsible for that, and I was supposed to be doing these monthly emails and updates and the roadmap, and it just got lost. We're really overloaded because we needed to basically hire some positions, and what we did, our software development works really well. I'm really happy with it, and most of the people are remote, and that's always the way that I learned to manage software companies, and that what we've been doing for like 10, 20 years now. It's fine, right? But I started a new thing called the hardware office about a year or 2 years ago. I don't remember, to start developing hardware products like the antennas and the Skyminer. And most of those people, they need equipment like a drill, CNC machines, plastic injection molding, acrylic plates, and things like that. So that has to be in the office. So I built up a center for that. And now we're going to have to build a marketing office or a sort of I want to have, my experience has been that remote business development and remote marketing and remote sales has not been successful. It's much better to have the people be able to come in, talk to the people, walk in, see what everyone's doing, be able to communicate. When we have 6 people and they're in 5 different countries, right, in 6 different cities, it was very difficult to coordinate a lot of the, like, this exchange listing, this has to be posted here, and this newsletter needed to go out, and this blog post had to be scheduled, and and there were 6 or 8 things that had to be done concurrently by 4 to 6 different people. And when they were remote, it was even with ticketing systems, and we tried all the modern technology and everything we could, it was not something that we were able to do remotely. So I want to build up an in-person office or center to be able to do those things, because I wasn't really happy with the result when we were doing it remotely. So we had some things that worked out really well, and some things that didn't work out as well as we wanted them to. And that's one of the lessons, like we need to do that. Right. And we still have people remote, and it's very difficult because I'm 12 hours off from the US. So we have a lot of people in the US, and I'm up at 8 p.m. I send them a message, it's 8 a.m. their time. Mm-hmm. So I send them a message at 4 p.m. It's 4 a.m. and they might be going to sleep.
I know that right? Between you and I'll wake up and there's a message from you. You send at 1 a.m. or something, because I'm 7 hours behind you. I do get it. It'd be even worse. Yeah.
So it's been crazy to deal with the time zone issues.
Okay.
And
then they're not going to go away. So are there any plans to, definite plans to reinstitute roadmap updates, monthly updates?
It was supposed to be done 2 months ago, and I've had personal things and like different things that I've been dealing with, and now it's the Chinese National Day and holiday and blah 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 blah. It's a lot of, it's just it is what it is.
Okay, all right. Then let's talk about the Skycoin hardware products. Any updates and informs you want to let people know? So this is the Sky Wallet, the Sky Miner, the antenna.
Oh God, we were doing. That's another area that we wanted to scale up, and what we've had is about half. We hired like people, and then a lot of them were like between their masters and PhD, and then like they went back to school and whatever. And a lot of them were from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, coming in and out. And then all the flights are frozen, or even if they can come back, there's no flights. So we're dealing with a lot. We have like 5 or 6 people that we want to hire right now to do the hardware projects, but they're stuck. Like they're not going to be able to come until January. and so it's really annoying. So I really feel like the virus basically, it didn't slow down our base operations, but it slowed down hiring a lot.
Mm.
So there's a lot of people, they're just waiting on the sidelines, and we can't really do much. But some things like remote, so the hardware, a lot of the 3D design and mechanical design we've been able to do remotely, and that's been great, perfect. There's no issue with that. But everything that needs like someone to come into the office and do like a drill or a PCB or use like an oscilloscope or electronic troubleshooting, that's been much slower. It basically went to a halt because of the virus. So I think coming in as the lockdown eases up and going into January, February, March, that's going to be full blown, and we have to decide what we're going to do, because at this point there's 50 things we could do. We could do a VPN product, which I think it's very important that we have a VPN that we can just plug in, a hardware VPN. And I think that's a very important project to get done. And our baseboard's done, our SoC is done, everything is ready to go right now with that, and we just need to design the case and start manufacturing it. Another thing is, if we're doing VPN for corporations, or we decide to start doing that next year, we're going to have the second version of the Skyminer out, for them to start installing and testing and so on. And that's pretty much contingent on the firmware, which is pretty much done. Some small rough parts we need to fix, but it's pretty much done. But we need to have a full-time person to make sure that product gets out, make sure the product packaging gets out, make sure the installation guide is finished, and so on. And then the hardware wallet, we're getting Ethereum and Bitcoin integration. And again, we hired a bunch of students, and then they went back to school. So, a lot of people are going back to school because, virus, slow economy, whatever. So we had like 6 developers, and a lot of them finished the work. And now I think we have like 2 left. And now we need to hire more developers for that. But we're going to get the Bitcoin and Ethereum support on the hardware wallet. And, and that'll be pretty much done as a product. And then if we're doing coal mines and things like that, if we have a customer and there's revenue and we're committed to doing that, then we have to build out a project team for that specific project. So right now we're just fielding, we're going around and we're just seeing what it is that we're going to be focusing on for the next year. Like, we have some research and development projects on the back burner that we want to demonstrate that this technology works for this case. But then there's other things that we're fully committed to, where we say, okay, with this customer, this has to be done in 3 months. We have to deliver this. It has to work. And those are critical projects. And I think it's still too early to commit to. A lot of the things are ready to go 3 months, 6 months. If we decide to do it, it'll be done very quickly. But we haven't committed to saying which one we're going to, release yet, which is the highest priority. So I think it's going to depend too what the demands are on the network. Like right now, I think we have enough nodes for the VPN service very comfortably for 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 users. But if we're looking at like, 100,000 users installed the app in this month, then we're going to have to scale up the hardware capacity very rapidly. And then suddenly the Skyminer 2 is no longer is no longer low priority. It's now absolutely essential, and we're going to have problems unless that's out very quickly. So we've also had this experience that depending on the market conditions and what's going on, something could be non-essential one day, and the next day it's emergency priority. So it's we run with it basically.
Okay. Anything else you want to let people know about what's happening with Skycoin that we haven't covered?
No, basically, the biggest thing is just the VPN, the software updates, releasing that, new like security updates to the hardware wallet, and that's about it. I think I want to get the antennas didn't really work the way we wanted to, because the software on the back end required too much human intervention, and I wanted to get the antennas to the point that they automatically connect and everything just works. And I think that's going to be one of the major milestones. But right now, because of what's going on, the most important milestone is getting the back end of Skywire done, and the VPN service up, so we can start doing other projects on top of that. And the CX 1.0 milestone and the decentralized social media and these decentralized apps, making sure that everything is 100% ready on CX is actually the highest priority right now. Right. But it's also the hardest thing to hire for. It's because it's programming language development. It's very difficult. We've had a lot of good developers come in, and it's just something, anyone could develop applications, but to do programming language development is a bit different skill set. You have to be much more anal and specific, and a lot more room to break things. So anyway, it is what it is.
Okay. And then what about exchange listings? Any news there? Anything you can let us know?
just listed on like 8 exchanges in the last like 2 months. I think X markets. What do you have the list? I can't even remember. Like
Yeah.
X markets,
Hold on a second.
something 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 bits something bits bit. Like I don't know all these bit somethings. I don't even know. But we did a lot of USD pairs and a lot of listing on different exchanges
So
because
this
to
is
allow
on.
US.
So this is on CoinMarketCap, Binance, X Markets, LBank, BitBins, CoinDCX, CoinSuper.
And there's another like 8 of them that aren't on there. I don't know why.
Right. Okay, so these are the ones listed on CoinMarketCap. So there are more. You're saying
CoinSuper, CDX, LBank, LMarket, BitBNS, Coin CDX, and there's a bunch of smaller. Let me turn on the light 1 second. Yeah, so basically, we listed on a lot of exchanges because of the U.S. Exchange access problem, and a lot of the liquidity is more fragmented. Before, everything was just on Binance, and a lot of people are moving. The U.S. doesn't, Binance U.S. doesn't have all coins listed, right? So Skycoin is not on Binance U.S. and we don't have a USDT pair. So there were some problems that people had trading because there's no USDT pair and no this and no that. So we started to list on these other exchanges and test them out. And X Markets has been doing pretty well. And I think there's USDT pair and there'll be a BTC pair. Some of the things that we're looking at is when we have this many exchanges, like if Skycoin is on 15 or 20 exchanges, there's the liquidity problem. And so it actually creates a lot of overhead because now we have to deal with finding some guy who has a bunch of bots and who can do market making and things like that to make sure the prices don't get out of control. And
could you move closer?
Yeah. So basically, it gets really, when you have one exchange, it's pretty easy. But when you have one exchange for Russia and one exchange for Europe and one exchange for, 2 exchanges for the U.S., so the U.S. market is fragmented between 5 exchanges, and some exchanges are fiat exchanges and some are crypto to crypto. The exchange situation now is much more fragmented than it was 2 to 3 years ago, and it's much more difficult because you have to be on all these exchanges, and at the same time, you have to provide a depth of liquidity. So, and doing that over 15 exchanges is crazy, and order book pairs and keeping the prices in line and making sure that people can buy and sell, more than $10,000 or something at a time without it affecting the price. It's just crazy. I don't really know what's.
It's
crazy. Really frustrating situation. I don't know, and I don't know what the solution is. I don't want to do the market making. I don't think we should be doing that.
Any plans for going on any dexes like Turtle Network or cross-chain dexes like Turtle Network, Polarity Exchange, Atomic Dex?
We built our own dex like 2 to 3 years ago, and we might launch that. I think that I don't know. We're going to see. I don't want. I don't want to. One of the problems we had was we did 15 or 20 projects before at the same time, and I really want to focus on 2 to 3 of the most strategic things, like the VPN and the Skywire, and some of the other stuff is on the back end. Like it has to be done eventually, but it's not really 100% priority. So a lot of people keep saying, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you do that?" And in theory, we could do it, but do I really want to? Do you really want to do 15 things at the same time? And also, the virus, you can't fly people in, and we're sort of stressed at this point for hiring more people. So the problem is you don't want to expand when you can't get more people, and we're actually understaffed. Like you said, like the newsletter wasn't going out every month, and it's like I'm supposed to do that, but I'm overloaded. So, and I need like an assistant, or we need like this person or that person, and someone has to go around these developers and bug them for the change logs and the updates and compile them and send out maintain the mailing list and maintain the blog and maintain the Twitter, and they want me to get on Twitter, and I'm already so busy, it's crazy. And I'm just going to say something, get really angry and say something and get shadow banned in 5 minutes. So,
all right. Synth, listen, thank you so much for this long conversation, detailed conversation about Skycoin. For everybody who's watching, I've got the links in the description below to go check out Skycoin. And also there's a very short video, about 3-4 minute video, which explains the whole Skycoin ecosystem really neatly. And that's done by a Skycoin holder. And I'll have a link to that video in the description below if you want to find out about that. And between now and when I see you next, please keep filling your pockets with crypto profits. This is Crypto Rich and Crypto Synth signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.